interviewing top talent in movies, television, sports, and music, leaders, entrepreneurs, and experts in over 30 countries out of New York, Manchester, Los Angeles. As a mentor, life and career coach, I help others, athletes, actors, and people of all walks of life solve the problems they face by introducing balance and routines that would otherwise leave them stuck and overthinking, paralyzed, unable to reach their goals. They look for engaging, rewarding lives, and I think they deserve that. Today, I invite you to join me on my radio show to learn from my guests and I how you can be more resilient and strong. I empower people who struggle with confusion or feel stuck in soulless, non-fulfilling situations. I help them find calm and claim their authentic self in their career path or personal life so they can live to their fullest potential. As a motivational speaker for businesses, schools, resorts, and communities, I speak on topics of achieving success and living a mentally healthy lifestyle, featuring topics from my Power My Life program within my revolutionary Impact, Influence, and Income Academy. I inspire the world as a radio journalist, author, life coach, career coach, resilience expert, mental health advocate, and most recently as a society writer for Transatlantic Today magazine. So happy that you joined me. Let's get rolling. You don't just have to go through it, you can grow through it. Good morning, and thank you for joining Alicia Pozsony with Resilient You. Every week we have guests on our show that talk about topics of resilience. This week I'm excited to have someone on my show that's made such an impact with our youth of today and really made a great effect on the world. I have Lori Hoff. Lori is the CEO of OMI and the founder of National Youth Week. Lori is on a mission to solve suicide and homicide crisis in our youth population today. They teach the power of their purpose to these kids. Lori, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Lori, tell our listeners, we have listeners, in over 300 countries on Power 98.5 FM. Tell our listeners a little bit about your mission and what you're doing today.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you're calling in from. Yes, I am so excited. We are helping to transform the lives of our youth. I'm a big proponent that when you have the right experience, when you have the right knowledge, when you gain understanding, you could change your circumstance. I used to say, don't look at where I am, because my current situation doesn't determine my future destination. And that is what we are teaching our young people. We are teaching them skills to change how they focus on their life, how they look at conflict, how do they deal with anger, and then just knowing who they are.
Amazing. It's so needed today, especially with the recent pandemic, with the, everybody's in their screens, all the kids are quick to react because we're taking them away from their devices. I know firsthand, but anyway, we have kids that really don't have those social skills. Some of them didn't enter school right away. Some of them did, but they don't know how to function. It takes time to do that. Now, when you impact that with trauma, maybe they've gone through something at home, maybe they've been through something. We have so many kids who are underprivileged, and this is such a great mission, Lori. Thank you so much for founding your organization. You're a leader, mentor. You're passionate about helping all the youth live pain-free and have healthy relationships. They call you Mama Lori. Is that right?
Yes. So I haven't been blessed with my own children, but I've been blessed with every child. So I say when I go and speak, different places around the world, and I let them know, if no one has told you today that they love you, that they care for you, that you are special, that what you think and how you feel matters. And then I coach parents, right? And I say one of the biggest things is to be comfortable with silence, because as you mentioned, our younger generation is being fed. They're fed information, they're fed videos, YouTube videos, different ways. All the information is being fed. They don't have a lot of time to think and process their thoughts and their feelings. So sometimes when you ask them a question, and I'm sure everyone in the audience will laugh, what's the first thing they say? I don't know. And I stop them and I say, you do know. You just haven't been given the right amount of time, or just someone wait to hear your thoughts and your feelings. Sometimes I'll wait 20 or 25 minutes just from one question. But when they respond, it is amazing. It helps us understand where they are, right? How are they thinking? How are they looking at the world? Because it's not the world that we grew up in. It's not the same. And so we would be wrong to try to address just with our skills and our knowledge and our education. And I have my master's in child and adolescent therapy, and I've counseled young people for over 20 years. But my greatest learning is when I could just take a moment to just sit in silence with a young person that's hurting and allow them to discover how they think, how they're feeling, and then help them walk through that trauma so that they don't just know who they are, but they understand how they are.
I love that. Now, so you help these kids to have healthier relationships. You help the parents to even get involved in that journey, right? Because it's not a once and done. And I love what you said about we can't use our current skill set, right? Or whatever we were brought up with, right? So it's excellent to know that there's resources like yourself to go out there and help bridge that gap between those two relationships. I mean, I myself, my journey, I put out a book for emotional strength because a lot of people, and Lori, I'm going to ask you about your past in a minute because we share something in common. I want to let our listeners know that there's some subject matter that might be sensitive to you. So if you are sensitive to suicide, homicide, anything like that, you may not want to listen. But it's such an important topic because with the world today, with the mental illness condition that many Americans face, it's something that we have to bring to the forefront. So, as I started to say, my experience was with a mentally ill parent. I had absenteeism in my household as well. So, you can imagine the after effects of a person now who has grown up and has to deal with that aftermath of not getting support or getting a lot of negativity, either physical, mental, both in many cases. Lori, would you be brave for a moment and share your history with us? How did you get here?
Sure, sure. So the reason that I'm definitely so passionate about good mental health and about youth is my youth was pretty troubling, right? My father was bipolar schizophrenic. I grew up being physically abused most of my life, really for no fault of
Sorry.
my own. I mean, just simple things, right? Turning the heat on. He didn't believe in having the heat on, so you turn the heat on. But one of the things that, and it was funny because I only had met one other lady that really understood what I was saying. But in terms of schizophrenia, they hear things in their head. So my father used to think that he said things and he didn't. And so as a kid, I had to learn to be perfect, to make sure everything was vacuumed and dusted and cleaned up, and that the heat was at a certain degree, and pressures of that for a child were unsurmountable, right? And so you learn to make sure everything is done because they think they've said it. Didn't I tell you to dust? Now, you didn't tell me to dust, but I have to anticipate as a child what you could have been thinking you told me to do, because if I don't, I'm going to get beat. And it was just very traumatic. And then as we stepped through my life, my grandmother was really my saving grace. My grandmother was my best friend. I loved her with my whole heart. Well, when I was about 15 years old, she was killed in a car accident. And of course, the people that hit her lived and she died. And it was so devastating for me. I wrote about suicide. I withdrew. No one even paid attention. They said my poem, which was about suicide. Oh, what a great poem. I'm like, what a great poem. I'm dying here, people. And then I reminded my mother of my father. So it wasn't very great environment to live in when you remind the person of the person that caused them the most pain. And a lot of times children deal with this. Children from divorced families, children from single parent homes, the child reminds the parent that they live with of the person that's caused them the most pain. So really, subconsciously, they are now a target, right? You are a target as a child without even understanding. So by the time I was 17, I was living out of my car and I was homeless.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that is one example of what people might be going through, these kids might be going through. My mother was also schizophrenic, and she had paranoid delusions. And so, there's so many incidents that happened. And although I wasn't physically, well, a couple times physical abuse in different ways, but imagine that, to live under that, the paranoia that you have, the self-doubt, the criticism. I mean, and to think that our kids are going through this, they don't have the resources. And I'm so sorry that you had gone through that, and that your grandmother passed so early. That was, my father left my mother and myself when I was young. My mother was mentally ill, and so she did the best she could, and she didn't leave me, right? So it was a weird dynamic between us, how I personally had the trauma of the abandonment, I had the neglect, I had different kind of abuse mentally from my mother. Um, Lots of domestic situations occurred, not only with me, but with her other relationships with her, my stepfather and stuff like that. But to have that support pulled away from you, I just can't even imagine. That's traumatic. So now you're taking what you went through, you've transformed, you're a successful adult running your own business. And, I don't want to gloss over that. The fact that you can connect with what these kids are feeling and give words to them, give them the space that they need to transform, have healthy relationships as they grow up. It's just amazing. So thank you, Laura. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
what are one of the ways that you get the youth to open up? I read that one of the ways you use a fun wheel.
Yes, an emotion wheel. I was actually going to just talk about one of the other things, but I'll go into the emotion wheel. So, what we do is a lot of times you have a generation, right, that has been taught now to express their feelings. And then when they go home, they're going home to a generation that has been told to be seen and not heard and not express your feelings. So, there's this dichotomy. And so, then how do you help young people even understand what feelings they have? So we have the emotion wheel. We ask young people, how many emotions are there? Oh, there's about 4, right? Angry, mad, sad, fearful. Actually, there's 41, right? And there's 28 variations of anger. So we walk through these things. But what we do is when we're at a festival, when we're at a school, we bring our emotion wheel, which is just like a prize wheel, and we have them spin it. And then we have it land on an emotion, and then we record them talking about the last time that they experienced that emotion. And if it lands on an emotion that they don't know, then we'll say, well, do you want to phone a friend? Right? Because I believe in collaborative group exercises. This teaches our young people how to work together, how to learn from each other, and how to collectively be strong. Right? So we'll have them video the last time they've experienced it. We also, have them, if they don't know, ask a friend. And we used to say, do you want to act it out? But that was kind of a bust. So that's another thing. When you're dealing with young people, you might have an idea, right? Like, oh, I think this would be fun. But when you're dealing with young people that have insecurities, that really don't want to be seen, even though they're seen all the time on social media, when you're face to face with them, it's a very different experience. So the acting, not so much, but them expressing the emotion and what they went through, that was successful. So what we've done then is that if they did it, they would get a t-shirt or, something fun. And so then of course everyone wanted to do it. Oh, I want to get a t-shirt. Okay, well, you need to spin the wheel, so. And then another thing that we have is called the case survey. And so that measures your conflict, your anger, and your self-esteem. Where are you in this meter? And so we ask very specific questions, right? And so when we were talking about how we grew up, one of the questions that we ask, and when you ask young people, what is the question that stood out to you? This is the one they say. Do you remain friends with people that hurt you? So if you grow up being hurt, then that is what you attract. And then that question, they said, I've never really thought about it before, but yes, I do. And so that one really stood out. And so then we address that, right? And then what does a healthy relationship look like? And quite frankly, when we started this case program, I lost some friends. I'm like, you know what? I don't think you're really a friend. And that's what we teach. Do a friend inventory. Are people speaking life into you? Right? Or is it a toxic environment? Check your friends. Do a friend inventory because, yep, I see some books.
we do that in here too. For the little kids as well, the 5 to 7-year-olds, we teach them what it looks like to be a good friend, because emotions are not something little kids, they just have tantrums. And that, like you said, adults want them to be quiet, right? Don't cause a fuss. Like, so this book is great for parents and caregivers to help them at that young age. And then for the older ones, the adults, there's that in here. Define what's healthy, define what a good relationship is. And then there's tips in here also for them to get to that next step of what would be healthy for them. Amazing. I'm sorry, I had to bring that up. Okay.
No worries. Once they take the survey, the kids that were like, oh my gosh, this says I have a problem with anger. I didn't even know. And it's like, because if you grow up in an angry environment, you don't really know you're angry. You think this is how things should be. And so one point I want to make is a lot of times when we're looking at homicide and suicide, a lot of times people say this is a senseless act. And what I have been communicating is it's not senseless to the people that are doing it. It makes sense to them because maybe their prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. They don't have decision-making capabilities. There are physical reasons as well as emotional reasons, as well as trauma-informed reasons, right? But the thing is that we are taking young people from senseless to sensibility. And sensibility is the ability to manage complex emotions. Anger is a complex emotion. There is something driving your anger. And what is it? Neglect, right? Abuse, trauma. And so when we take a look at that, we do like an anger iceberg. So I always recommend exercises because the exercises will help you discover what is going on. And with the anger iceberg, it's what lies beneath. And then we give an example. Here's an example. Okay, then we're going to have you guys all do it. And if you want to share, if you don't want to share, they want to share. Our young people want help. They are looking for an outlet. I encourage adults all the time. I don't care if it's your niece, your nephew, your son, your daughter, ask them every day, are you okay? Because the one day you don't ask them might be the day that they're willing to open up. You just don't know. We were traveling, and a friend of mine, Dr. O, we went into high school. We were getting ready to do our workshops, and this young lady, she looked a little down, and then my friend said, are you okay? And she just screamed, right? We're in the hallway. She screamed, no, I'm not. And thank you for noticing. And it's like, that's what I feel like when our young people are cutting and when they're doing these things, they are screaming at the top of their lungs, help me. And we need to be there for them.
Yes. And you know, the fact that you're talking about this is just so amazing and perfect because I myself have come into contact with people, and I think this might be true for a lot of us, that we know someone who has had a kid or a cousin or their neighbor, somebody that did something like that, cutting or suicide attempt. And you know, it is something that we really need to talk about. Parents, if you're out there, adults, don't be embarrassed by this. It's not a negative reflection on you if a kid is going through something. I you don't know how many times that people just want to be quiet and push it under the rug, you know, and just pretend like it's not there. So what you and I are doing is just amazing. One of the quotes
Yes.
one of the quotes you mentioned to me, one of the youth had said, you make mental health fun. Case has not taught me who I am, but how I am. You want to tell our listeners about Case and about that little statement because it's so perfect. It ties right into what we were just talking about.
Sure. So once we did the survey, then the young people were like, well, how do I get help? What do I do? They started asking questions like, I just have this survey. Now I have this information. I need help. And so we started a 10-week program called CASE. We just kept the same name. So it's conflict, resolution, anger management, and self-worth. And what we learned through this was we are saying to improve self-worth. Well, the young people are saying we are a generation of self-hatred.
Mm,
And the first time a young person said that to me, I just felt a pit in the bottom of my stomach and I just cried and
mm,
was just like, these are amazing, beautiful young people with dreams and visions, and how can we help them? And so through the program, we walk through what are your conflict trigger scales? Like I talked about, we do a lot of exercises because we want them to talk. We want them to discover how they were created. And so we walk through different exercises that teach them, right? What are the variations of anger? And what do you do? Does your face get hot? Do you start to pace? And I use very
mhm,
dramatic expressions so that young people could say, oh my gosh, yeah, I have felt that. I've experienced that.
mm,
And so that they can meet you at the level of their trauma, at the level of their pain. And we discuss it and we talk about it. And I encourage, if you need further counseling, get further counseling. But it is the first
mm.
step to them opening up and understanding themselves and just how they're made.
Wonderful. That's excellent. I mean, I was trained in Art Grow training where it's a parent caregiver training to help them understand. Thanks so much for sharing that information on the CASE program and the survey. I know that that survey is available on the website. So, how can people get in touch with you for your 10-week CASE program?
Yeah, so they can go when you first go onto the website, there is a link that they could click on and sign up for more information. Or they can always just email me directly, Lori at nywusa.com. What we did earlier in the year was we trained other nonprofits in the CASE program. So we also will do a training for a nonprofit that supports youth for free. We want to make sure that people have the information and are able to help our young people. And so it was fantastic because these are organizations that support youth, but have been struggling with connecting. And when they took the training, they were like, man, all adults need this. And I was like, well, we're focused on young people right now, but Yeah, we will do a training. It's a 10-week program for the young people, but for the training, it's a 3-week. So it's a 2-hour training. So really 6 hours of training, but we break it out because there is homework and different things throughout the week. And we also encourage people to think about what they've learned and how they could put it into practice. And then how did that work throughout the week, right? So we want our young people to demonstrate these behaviors. So we also have to demonstrate them as well.
Now, I was going to ask you, that was going to be my next question. So, because I have people I'm going to be sending you already. Okay, so we'll hit our county here, and we'll make sure that we get this out. So, listeners, if you are interested, if you have kids, if you are an educator, if you're a therapist, if you're any child study teams, any area where you're interacting with the youth, reach out to Lori at nywusa.com. You can also follow her on the socials. Lori, you have Instagram, you have where else might they be able to get any tips and tricks?
Yeah, so we're everything NYW USA. So we have Twitter, which is now X, I believe. We have the Gram, we have TikTok. And so everything is NYW USA. And that just stands for National Youth Week. So in the beginning, you had mentioned I was the founder of National Youth Week. For the United States, there was no National Youth Week. And so we created it in 2015. And we have different pillars: teamwork, community service, achievement, and innovation. And so we encourage young people across the country, depending upon which day it is, to get involved in that pillar. One of the things that we'll be looking to do in 2024 is really a hackathon for mental health, for gaming, specifically gaming. Because one thing we want to address, we talk about homicide, our generation looks at the younger generation and says, how can they film a murder? There are actually young people that get their phones out and film when someone is being shot or stabbed. And it's very hard for us to understand, how can they just stand there and do nothing? Well, if they've trained their brain from the video games, right, that this is a virtual reality, that when they are in reality, they have a very hard time transitioning. So instead of asking that question, let's ask the question of what games can we introduce to retrain the brain for good mental health, to stop violence, to encourage healthy relationships. Well, who better to build the games than young people that are already playing the games? So in 2024, we definitely want to do a hackathon for gaming for good mental health, and then work with a gaming company to actually have them put that game in the rotation. And so we are really going where the young people are, right? A lot of negative messaging to our young people. I had said one time when I was doing a talk that, one of the songs says, I'm a killer, I'm a killer. When you go through my hood, I'm gonna kill you. And then we're surprised when our young people actually kill, where they've actually been programmed to kill. So what we want to do is reprogram, right? That you are not a killer, that you are a unique, special young person with gifts and talents and abilities and have a purpose. That's what we want to focus on for our young people.
Yeah. So, and you just said so much there. So, National Youth Week is something that you have started, and it's in December. Am I right? Oh no, when is
Oh,
it?
no.
June.
June. Yeah, June. And it's June 13 and 19 because teens are 13 and 19. So it's like right when school is ending, a way to kick off the summer with positivity and getting everyone engaged and collaborating for a purpose. And so it's June 13th to the 19th.
Wonderful. So, and I love the tenants. And I don't know, Lori, were you ever a Girl Scout or any? Because the similar pillars are there too. So I'm teaching those kids in scouting. It's so necessary. And it helps them to thrive and grow up with skills and with that self-esteem, that self-confidence that you mentioned. So,
I
imagine
wasn't
these
a girl.
kids.
I wasn't a Girl Scout, but when you mention the tenants, the premise for National Youth Week is you have a lot of young people that are involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters, Girl Scouts, Boys and
Mhm,
Girls Club, and so these young people show up differently in
mhm,
each of these places. Well, what we want to do is bring all of the people that service youth together so that
mhm,
we can help that young person show up whole. Right.
mhm.
I've been on the board of Big Brothers Big Sisters. I've worked very closely with Boys and Girls Club. I've been active in youth groups in church. I've supported Girls Inc., supported Girl Scouts. So being
Yeah.
engaged and involved with all the organizations that support youth. Raise Hope is an organization out of Dallas, Texas, that supports girls and taught them how to do bike riding, and did a bike ride in an underserved area, and it was huge success. Taught them volleyball skills so that they could learn
Mhm,
teaming. They were able to go to areas they probably would have never even seen. So
mm.
working with amazing nonprofits that are transforming their world, the more we
Mm.
come together and we share our strengths. You're good at this, I'm good at this, and we collaborate, the better support we have for our young people.
It is so true. It's so true. And as you were talking, I grew up in a city and in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I didn't have things that, I see my kids now have because we live in a nicer park-like area, but I didn't have swimming. I didn't have a sport. I didn't have anything like that. I had a bike when I guess I was maybe 8, and my mother bought me a used bike, a secondhand bike. I think she did it mainly to get me out of her hair, out of the house. But I was outside with it, and two little boys said, "Hey, let me ride your bike," and they never came back with it. So
Mm.
all those opportunities that you just mentioned are so amazing. So, listeners, if you are involved in any of these organizations that support the youth, whether a church group, whether Boys and Girls Club, anything with scouting, any kind of involvement like that, it's amazing. Connect with Lori, National Youth Week, every year, June 13th to 19th. And again, there's a survey online on nywusa.com that kids or adults can take that survey to manage or to see where they stand with their own conflict, anger,
Self-esteem. The easiest
self-esteem.
way to remember it is case. And so, and actually one of my mentors, St. Marshall, helped name it. So you might be familiar. She's actually the CEO
Yeah,
for Dallas Mavs, and an amazing woman, a
yeah.
leader, a mentor, just someone great. And I just came with this idea and was like, hey, there's like anger and self-esteem. I had it all written out, and she just kind of circled, see, she said, case, state your case. And so there it was. And so that's another thing that's so important is when our young people have ideas, when they are passionate about something, be that listening ear. Teach them how to be creative, because our creativity is not supported widely.
Yes.
Right. And so what happens is then they begin to isolate. And so,
Mm,
what we want to do is encourage that creativity. I forgot to mention Diamonds and Pearls is another amazing group that's in Garland,
mm,
Texas, where every month they probably have about 85 young girls from middle school to high school. And they're just going over and talking. They're teaching art. They're teaching about their self image. They're teaching things that they wouldn't get just regularly in school. And so we partner with them. And so
mm,
anybody that is doing stuff, we want to help, we want to support, we want
mm.
to encourage you. It is a daunting task to really work with youth, right? And just because
Mm.
of everything that they face. And
Yes, yes.
so sometimes our youth leaders get tired. Sometimes our leaders get discouraged. And I would just say, just keep pushing, because if you could change one life, that one life can change another life, that another life could change, and then it becomes this domino effect. And everybody says, what does success look like to you? And when I go and speak to the young people, I say, if one young person decides not to take their life, That's
Mm.
success for me. I'm like, that's success because a life is such an amazing, beautiful gift from God. And if we could save one life, that's where it's at. And so, we do a lot of work, and a lot of people across the country and across the world do a lot of work that might not be recognized. But you know what? Don't give up. That's always my message is don't give up, because that one life you change can change so many.
It's so
And
true. Well, and I want to share a story. I I mentioned I put out the book Emotional Strength Explained, and it's a journal, a self-help journal where it prompts you to take a look at what it is that you're facing, and then it takes you through every day, and it gives you opportunity to stop and spend more time or revisit areas if you need more time. But it really is something that has worked in so many people's lives. But I was at work as a project manager, and a woman joined a panel, and she started saying how she was going through stress and she was new at the company. She didn't know what she was doing there yet in her job. And so she felt like she couldn't do the job effectively, but she was committed and she really wanted to change her life. So when we asked her, what do you mean you want to change your life? She had said that her nephew was killed by gun violence. Her uh there was mental illness in the family, autism in the family. There was so many issues that this poor woman was dealing with. So I gave her the book, and when she started on the book, she realized that she needed help. And it was too overwhelming for her, though, to go to counseling, right? So if a person, and especially a young person who doesn't have the skills that we may have as an older adult, where you learn things along the way, it's just so true what you said about taking that time to listen, to be there. And if you can change one life, I'll tell you from my own experience, it's amazing to see that you can give hope back, you can help these kids learn and grow. And in the Girl Scouting program, I'll tell you, we have, they do different things each year, and then they can earn their different awards. And so um, the the final award is a gold award, I think it's called, and it's something that they have to give back to the community. It has to be sustainable. It has to make a difference. And to see these ideas that these girls come up with, every year, it's so amazing. One girl had taken the walls of the middle school and they did art murals with positive sayings on it, and different things can make such a huge difference. So keep these kids engaged. Work with Lori with National Youth Week and her nonprofit. And again, I have contacts, so we'll be working together in the future, I think, for sure. But again, listeners, go online, take a look at that survey. You can find it on nywusa.com. And again, we're looking at everything Lori's offering today. She supports at-risk youth against suicide, homicide, school shootings, and self-hatred. We really have to work toward these kids. Looking forward, Lori, to that upcoming hackathon in 2024. There was a video game. What's that about? It looked like another game with the way that it was going through. Well, I was surprised to find out in that game you play either as a killer or as a hunted. And the idea is to get through the night. And I'm like, oh, and they put the if you die or whatever, they put it up on a meat hook, and that's the way that they do the bodies. And I'm just like, why are you playing this? What do you get out of this? The thrill, the hunt, the chase. But it was so bizarre to me why a person would want to do that. And I think it was the elevation of gaming over the past few years. So
right.
again, excellent thing to do to kind of help to retrain the brains of the youth to know that they're more than their environment. They're more than what they're around and what they've been exposed to. So wonderful, Lori. So let me ask you, I want to ask you one last question. I know you've taken a lot of time with us today. What can people do at home Is there something they can do at home to be more resilient in the face of their challenges?
I'm glad you said that because I was just with my final thought, and I always like to give an action item. So, as we're getting ready to go into fourth quarter, I've been through a lot of things. I've only mentioned one. I've survived 9/11. I was there during that. I've almost,
Mm,
I've lived through blood clots in my legs over 285, where they said they were looking at a dead person. And one of the things that I think of is having a goal, right? What is your goal? And make your goal smart, right? Measurable, attainable. What is something that you can finish this year strong with? So when
mm,
you face obstacles, when we talk about being resilient, when you face obstacles, you can look to your goal. Here is my goal, right? And so even if I'm faced with something, I'm going to continue because I have a goal.
mm,
And having that goal keeps you resilient, keeps you moving forward. So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to find a cure for cancer, or I'm going to save the entire world. It's in your world. How can you make a difference
mm,
by the end of the year? And that's what I would leave you with. Set a goal that you can attain by the end of this year and end the year strong, no matter what you faced. Our theme for 2023 was unstoppable. So we were saying to our youth, you are unstoppable over depression. You are unstoppable over
mm,
anxiety. You are unstoppable over conflict. You are unstoppable over violence. You are unstoppable over sickness. Whatever is trying to come against you, you can be unstoppable. And
mm,
that is our message to our young people. And how you get there is by setting a goal and achieving it, ending the year strong. So thank
mm.
you so much for having me. I've enjoyed the time being here. I appreciate the dialogue. Alicia, thank you so much for having me on your show. Definitely, if I can help in any way, I am here. I am an advocate. I am a disruptor
Mm.
of poor behaviors in our youth and want to change them and help them have healthy habits. So thank you so much
Okay.
and have an awesome day.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you so much. Thank you. And let our listeners contact Lori today.